It's not about what you have. It's about who you have. It's not about where you live. It's about how you live. And it's not about what you do. It's about why you do it. Welcome to the Momentasize Podcast. Today, I have got a special guest for us. He's a coach of mine. He's the sports performance coach at the University of Portland, where he's won 4 championships. 4 championships he's won there. He's a guy who really lives the growth mindset and helps other people do the same thing. He's a 100-miler, just like he's in the 100-mile club, meaning he's run 100 miles. He's got a podcast. Without further ado, please help me welcome Bryant Ferate to the podcast, baby.
Let's go.
How's it going, man?
Dude, it's great. It's good to be here and check out the spot in person.
Yeah, I'm really glad you came. I want to just start off. What do you think it takes to create a championship mindset?
Ooh, starting off hot, baby. Championship mindset.
Yeah.
Dude, I think off the cuff, I think it all comes down to awareness because especially at the college level, like you come in and like you probably experienced this, but you come in at 18 and you're the best player of the team that you've been on. And I think it's just an awareness of like your habits. It's like, are your daily habits lined up with like the vision that you have? And I think a championship mindset when you're 18, it's like you're focused maybe on like the wrong things, but it's, I think it just comes back to awareness. It's like there's way less tactical teaching. There's way less. It's like it's knowing like how to organize your life and organize like I call it lifestyle performance. And maybe as an 18-year-old student athlete in college, when you come in, you're thinking about I want to start. I want to win like conference accolades. I want to win a championship. But then you, as a freshman, you forget that there's a guy who's already been there for 3 years. And then you're like, oh, why am I not playing? And you get caught up in these things. But I think a championship mindset, it all comes down to like awareness of how your decisions line up with how your habits, your actions, how all of those line up with who you want to be. And I know that's difficult, especially early on. But like I talk with athletes a lot, like, what do you want your to-be list versus your to-do list? Because you get caught up with like, go to class. I got to knock out my park hours or, like something, or I got to like go to, I don't know, you got to meet with a professor and all of that. And it's organizing your life, organizing your habits to line up with who you want to be. But it all comes back to awareness. And I know like I've been there as well, where you reflect back and you're like, what was I doing? And you feel like you're on, like, ironically, it fits with the Portland Pilots, but you feel like you're on autopilot or like you're a passenger and you want to be a pilot. You want to be in control. So I think championship mindset, it starts with awareness. So you know the actions you take and then you can audit them, which I think is difficult for anybody, but especially when you're 18 and you're brand new, like you're ready to go, like you want to compete, you want to prove yourself. But when you ask that, the first thing I think about is like right now, a lot of the athletes, they report to like day 1 of summer training, like those days when we'd go to Roosevelt and all of that is this upcoming Monday. Yeah. So the end of June. So I was just, when you asked that question, my first thought is those freshmen coming in, because they're hungry to win a championship and prove themselves, but it's helping someone just become more aware.
Yeah, I love that answer. Actually, I would have never thought that you were going to answer with awareness, but I agree with you because I remember a clear moment. I didn't even understand the difference between like the ego state and the awareness state. And actually my wife, she gave me a book by a guy named Eckhart Tolle called The New Era or The New World, one of the two, don't quote me on it, and he started to explain exactly what you said, that there's 2 states, 2 voices in someone's mind, the egoic state of mind, which is probably exactly what you were explaining, where you said freshman comes in, they're used to being the top of their club or their team before they were at the collegiate level. And now they have to deal with the egoic state of mind is working through all of that. And then the awareness state gets born. And that's the state of true awareness where you can see it all. And I really, when that first hit me, I was only living purely in the egoic state for a long time. Like I didn't even know that other voice was really there. And then once once I read this book, it just started to open up my mind. I'm like, yeah, there are two voices inside of me. My egoic state is the one that like will attack or wants something to be a certain way or whatever. And then my awareness state is what's giving me the full picture. And sometimes I don't even like that full picture, but it's giving me the full picture. So I think that I really like that answer. I wasn't expecting that at all. And I think that a true champion does always have to act out of awareness. Yeah. So it's a cool answer. I wasn't expecting that one.
Yeah. You actually made me think about two things. So one is, Mike Tyson had this interesting point. It was on a podcast with Harvey Martin. He's the mental performance coach for the San Francisco Giants.
Yeah.
And they were talking about Mike Tyson and how he discussed ego. And because people are like, oh, ego is bad. Yeah. You know, like you don't want to have an ego. And Mike Tyson said, ego is like conscious ego is like having your best friend. And that's good. Like that thing helps you make decisions and helps you be the best version of you. But it's unconscious ego.
Yeah.
That is potentially the bad thing, you know? And it's like, that thing's like flying all over the place, making you do things that you're not even aware of, or like backlash of people, like all of that. So it's like not, you want to dim the ego. You just want to be aware and be conscious of it versus this unconscious thing that's just like ripping. And I thought that was a cool example or a cool like concept, because you hear so many times like, hey, when you come in here, check your ego at the door. And it's like, we don't want you to check it. Like, don't leave it. Just like be conscious of it instead of having this unconscious thing trying to like control your life. But the other part you just made me think of is I talked with the baseball, men's soccer, women's basketball, and track about these 3 levels of awareness.
Yeah.
And like the first level is, well, there's 4, I guess, because there's 0. Like if you have no awareness.
Yeah.
So, and then maybe you could think about how this reflects on your playing career. But so like level 0 is you have no idea what's going on. Level 1 is you're aware of yourself. So whether that's in training or like in a workout, you know, you're doing a lift, like, you know, the exercise, you know, how much weight you need to put on the bar. And then level 2 is like small group awareness. So maybe you're like training small sided and you're like, okay, I'm aware of what I need to do. And I'm aware of maybe like, I don't know, the 6 other guys around you. So small group, but then you can apply small group awareness to like, think if you're like back in the college days, like you're at a party. I tell the athletes, I'm like, imagine if you're at a party and there's a fight and you're like, yo, I got to get my friends. I got to get my teammates. Small group awareness. You're aware of your 3 friends that you're at the party with. You grab your 3 friends and you get out of there. So it's like having that awareness where you can step back and you're like, okay, I'm aware of me and 3 people around me. And then like level 3 is like coach awareness. So it's like while you're training on the field, you could zoom out and you're looking at it as if you're the coach and you're aware of what everybody's doing, not just your small little group. And then you want to like fluctuate within those. So it's like, you could be aware of what 20 plus guys are doing on your team, and you can kind of give feedback and almost catch things before the coach even has to say it. And that's incredible awareness. Same thing in like business, you know, you want to have that, be able to zoom out and look at your whole company, not just like, oh, the one guy I'm working with or just you. Can you zoom out? Can like people on your team zoom out and like look at things as if you were looking at them, and then they catch it before you even have to say anything? So that was the other part you made me think about, is these 3 levels of awareness, which you can't expect a freshman to.
Yeah, because it grows with experience. As soon as you started saying that, I started to think back as well. And I think the awareness grows with experience, and then having the right mentors to help you see the awareness or see the point. So one of the questions I was going to say is, do you think it grows with experience? But it does. There's no way about it. If you look at what I love about sports in general is although now my playing career is done, all the life lessons that it has provided and all the fundamentals and foundational life principles that it has brought me is unbelievable. Where else do you get an opportunity to work on something that you love, a skill that you love, play, like learn the lessons of competition, winning, losing, improving, and take all of that. And then whatever you do, whether you build a business, your family, etc., sports creates such a great opportunity for people to have these really, really fundamentally strong life principles that they get to bring into life. Like the things that we talked about when you were coaching us are now also brought into our everyday life as we live on. So what a cool situation, right?
Yeah.
It's a cool one. So on it takes awareness to become a champion. What about the back end work? I mean, because that's what you do. You are coaching everybody on what I would call sometimes is really behind the scenes, right? Mm-hmm. You're doing some of the most important work there is, but it's all behind the scenes. Talk to us a little bit about what that's like and what it takes behind the scenes after you have awareness. Now, what does it take behind the scenes to become a champion?
Yeah, lately, I think I brought up awareness first because that's something I've been have a big kick on recently, is just diving into the things that I think a lot of people overlook. Because behind the scenes, it's like, yes, you have to lift weights, you have to sprint, you have to do all this physical prep, but that lifestyle performance aspect is something I've just recently, even with like the podcast and the writing, has been fun. Like I'll pull concepts from conversations I'll have on the podcast or conversations or things I write about. And then it's like bringing those back in and using that to like teach the athletes. So like this idea I think about, or like one of my missions is like cultivating curiosity. And I think that's another back end skill that is maybe not your first thought when you think of, oh, these athletes are Division I athletes and they're trying to win a championship. And it's maybe not the thing I start with. Like you want to teach athletes how to like move properly and like all of the physical training aspects. But I think there's this gap in lifestyle performance or leveling up your curiosity, because you think about, like I think about, there's so many times with the athletes where they come in the weight room and then they're like, oh, what do we got today? And they do their training session. And then you're like, all right, see you later. Okay. So that's just like normal. But we've all been around those people that are like, hey, why are we doing this? Hey, I looked up this thing. I looked up this video and I saw this. What do you think about this? And that's like, you can feel that energy and that they're like really curious about getting better. And so I think behind the scenes, it's organizing training weeks. So like what's a high intensity day? What's a low intensity day? Can we match up like our strength development with, like if we use soccer for an example, like we want to do our sessions as far away from the match. So organizing a training week and all of that. But I think it's like, how can you cultivate curiosity where maybe there's a guy who like doesn't like lifting and he's like, yeah, man, like I don't really want to do it. And then it's like, oh, let's get curious about this. Like, why don't you like it? Oh, you only lift after training. It's like, interesting. Okay. Like I love lifting and I probably don't want to lift weights after being on the field for 2 hours straight so then it's like, oh, cool. Let's do 20 minutes pre-practice. And then you can like getting curious about maybe that guy's specific situation. Then you can start to better understand maybe like, why doesn't he like lifting? He wants to be a champion, but maybe he doesn't like it. But it's because you always lift after crazy on-field work, you know? So it's like, cool, let's do 20 minutes before. So on the back end, I think it's like, how can you move well? How can we have like match up our stress day? So it's like a high stress day or a low stress day in regards to training. You don't want a bunch of medium days, you know? It's like, you want to keep your high days high and your low days low. But I do think like lifestyle performance of organizing your sleep, like your nutrition, like when you're gonna, I use this example. It's like sleep, school, sport. You got to have some fun. So like some social time of when you're going to spend time with your friends. And it's just being able to like organize all of those and just being like ruthless, or not ruthless, but like relentless with how you're going to spend your time and spend your energy. So I've been really diving into those. I don't know. I could go more into like the physical aspect, but I do think taking care of your lifestyle performance really cleans up a lot of things, because the lifting is going to get done and we could get into the nitty gritty of that. Just like for training for a marathon, when people are like, do you want me to explain the workouts I did? Yeah. But it's really the other back end stuff, like lifestyle performance, being curious about, okay, how am I approaching these training sessions that I've been really trying to lean into and help athletes like uncover that. Because ultimately, if they're curious, they're gonna learn way more than me just like telling them facts, you know, and then we can more so collaborate.
Yeah. No, I like that.
Not to go on a rant.
No, you're not. That's what the whole thing is. So using curiosity to really create positive pivots and figure out, not just shut your mind and figure it out. I think for me, exactly what you're saying, for me, it's always been like the discipline that you can bring to something is the destiny that you have. So discipline equals destiny, like through and through. Discipline in all the small habits you're talking about, discipline in your sleep, your eating, your organization, your schedule, your training. The discipline that you can bring is the destiny that you'll have. And we saw that with if you look at the team we had, and I've never really talked about it on the podcast, but we had a talented team that lacked leadership and discipline because we ended up winning it. We went from winning 0 games or maybe 1 game, I think. If you look at the record, I think it might have been 1 game, right, to winning the championship with almost the exact same team. Now, we had some other key team players that came in, but we were given a blueprint. And then we were given, through coaching, we were given discipline every single day, the discipline that came with the small things, all the way from the band work to just showing up, the summer training, showing up, all the small things, all the small habits that you may not think are making a difference. That's actually what's creating the destiny that you're going to have, right? And so I couldn't agree more. It's making sure, and what I really liked you said is, rather than tackling your to-do list, tackle your to-be list. I don't have a to-be list, but I like that much more, because to-be is working on who you really are, who you want to become. To-do is just like a dopamine checkoff list, right? So I like that balance. And I think that discipline, like a real championship, look at any champion, their discipline is insane. Insane. Yeah. Study their discipline. Every successful person, there is not one, like truly 1%er who doesn't have massive discipline to get to where they want to go. Right.
Yeah. I think another interesting part, just reflecting back on that team, my first year, like your senior year, is I'm not really sure how to create that like vibe and that energy of, like, we've talked about this before, or like all the other guys, like how you guys stay as like this collective group, or like all the guys from that team like relatively stay in touch. Yeah. You know, like we went to Rory's engagement party, and it's like a squad is there, which I think is another unique thing about specifically that championship team, is like you don't see that as much. Like people stay in touch, maybe more like small groups, but that's something like I step back and I'm like, dang, like that's incredible. Like 20, like it's not like 3 or 4 guys are really good friends. It's like 20. Yeah. And it's like, dang, that's a squad. And I think that's a hard thing to create as a coach, or as like a manager or a boss or whatever. It's like creating like best friend energy and like real relationships that is something unique to that team.
Yeah. I mean, that came from I think it comes from a combination of the people who are there, but also when you go through those losses, like when you're not living up to your true potential, and then all of a sudden you stick together still, even though you're not playing to your true potential. And then you go from what happened over the last couple of years to end up going out on winning a championship like that. There's definitely a real bond that gets built there that lasts more than just during the stint of playing. It's a lifetime bond. And that's another thing with sports, right? Like the team sports specifically, you spend so much time working together in that that energy, that awareness state you talked about. What was special about that championship team that we had even in the season, we had a couple stints where you could feel an energy that was happening, even though we lost the game, but it didn't even matter. Like nobody had to say anything. Everybody was all connected. We knew it was all good. We're going to learn the lessons and we're going to move forward. And you could feel this energy building up over time. And so, I think that brotherhood came, I think, from the people within it, but also having a stint where you're not playing to your true potential, and then all coming together and really going out on what was really, really special for a lot of the guys who.
Yeah. Dude, I want to hear you rip on this idea. It's something I've been thinking about. I just wrote about it in my newsletter, but it's called relationship density.
Okay.
And I don't know. I was at this strength conditioning conference. It's like the national conference. So we went to Fort Worth, Texas, and you like meet up with all your buddies. that
all your other strength coaches.
Yeah, all the other strength coaches. And you don't get to see them very often, because everybody has the same schedule and like we're all at different universities. Yeah. And I was talking through with a couple of my friends, like why do you think we're such close friends where in reality I've only spent like a summer internship with those people? And I don't know if you've ever felt that where it's like maybe you've only hung out with somebody a few times, but you're closer to them and you text them all the time, like, hey, what's up? Then like some other people, like no knock on these other people, but there's other people that you've seen every day for years. Yeah. And like, they don't know that much about you. You don't know much about them. But then there's this other person that you, like, I think about that with podcasting too. Like there's some people I've never met before, but I've like done a virtual podcast with. Yeah. And I met through Twitter. Yeah. And we'll like get on the phone once every maybe like week or two to talk podcasting. Yeah. And you're like, why do I have this like density? There's something to that relationship. Yeah. And I really haven't spent that much time with them compared to these. Yeah. It's just like getting, like what you mentioned before we click record. Yeah. It's like, how can you get to depth as quickly as possible? Yeah. Which is great in podcasting, but it's also great in just like, that's what you want in your life. So this idea of relationship density. Yeah. Yeah.
It's got to be, for me, it's energy, right? You can connect on an energy. And I remember when I met my wife for the first time, it's true love at first sight. Didn't know it existed. True love at first sight. Met together. And one of the first things I said to her after I introduced myself was like, we were hanging out. And I was like, I missed you so much. Like, where have you been my whole life? And tell me everything. And so all I could explain, because I couldn't really explain it, is it's energy that comes together. So when you're connecting with somebody, it's the energy piece that automatically gets you connected versus, somebody that maybe you guys have opposite energies. You might not connect with them as tight. So to me, all those trainers that you're with, you guys are all on a similar mission to become the best. I think if you're staying in that and you're in the coaching world, what you're trying to do is you're serving both yourself and people you care about to live the growth mindset, to become the best version of who they can become. And so that's its own energy, right? And that's a very high frequency, a growth mindset energy is contagious. Yeah. And so when you have other people that have that, I think you just come together. So that's what I would relate it to energy specifically. Yeah.
That's cool. You said mission. Huh. That's something I've been really big on is this idea. There's these Sahil Bloom and Zach Pogrub. Or Pogrub. I'm not sure how to say his last name, but they're two guys I really look up to. They're like writers. They have a newsletter or they post on social media, but they shared this quote. It was, people want to root for someone on a mission. Yeah. And it's just like what you said, it's like you have a shared mission, boom, instantly you're connected. Yeah. But I don't know, that quote's been like setting my heart on fire.
It's a good one. Yeah,
like people want to root for someone on a mission. Yeah. Cause it's like what you said, like you can feel that energy or like not to get to, it's like that aura where you're like, oh my God, like that guy's on a mission. And it's easier to understand when it's like a movie, you see, like I made the joke about Man on Fire with Denzel Washington. And it's like, you see in that movie, it's like evident this dude's on a mission and it's like you instantly connect with that. But the same thing is when you notice someone in your day to day who's on a mission, you're like, oh man, I can feel something here. So that's something that's cool that you said mission, because that's something I've written about. I need to publish an article on the
publish it already.
On the relationship density aspect.
Yeah, you should publish it. I like it. Energy is definitely one of those felt. You feel it, but it's hard to describe. I think that's what's special about energy. Take us back to Tiny Ferate. Like take us back, just your childhood and how you got here. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, dude. Well, I grew up. It's actually my dad built our house. He built it by himself in the 80s out on this lake. Yeah, it's called Lake Tahuya. Okay, out in Washington on the Kitsap Peninsula. Okay, but yeah, I think one unique thing was I make the joke like I went to high school before I went to like elementary school, because both my parents they've taught high school for over 35 years. That's how they met. So they both taught at Central Kitsap High School. Yeah. And that's where they met. They got married. And then I started going to, like, my mom started bringing me when I was like 2 or 3, just like being around school. And I think that's something we talked about that on the drive down here to Bend. One of my buddies, Devin, was like, oh, it's interesting how there's this gravitational pull to doing something similar as your family. Like maybe I'm not a high school teacher, but I do love to teach. And I think a part of that component is growing up in high school. Like all the teachers knew me. Like I was always around. I remember like to catch the bus to go to school. The bus would drive to the high school and pick me up. And then I would always get dropped off at the end of the day at the high school because my parents were always there. So just always being around sports. My dad worked like the events, like the setup and security for sporting events. So it was like football, basketball, soccer, like always around it.
Yeah.
But just growing up around high school and the teaching aspect, that's something I reflect back on and be like, maybe that's where I got some of that. Like my parents, they're always trying to like serve and give back and impact other people. I thought it was cool as well. Like my dad taught auto shop and my mom taught a multitude of things, but like it's pretty funny to think about now, but she was a typewriter teacher.
Okay. Boom.
So everyone bring your typewriter in. And
I remember those.
You'd learn how to on a typewriter.
Yeah.
And then they evolved to like, hey, computers, we're going to teach you how to type on a computer. And then it's like crazy now that you open up your phone and you're like, yeah.
Pretty soon there can be little robots running around.
Yeah, seriously. AI will be just doing all of it for us. Yeah. But that's a component reflecting back on my childhood where I think that's why like I resonate so much with coaching or being able to educate other people is just like growing up in high school, like my entire life.
Yeah, it's pretty dang cool. I like that. I like that piece. Your parents are great. I got to meet them for the first time actually when you went on a crazy venture, which is when you ran a 100-miler. You know, talk to us a little bit. So for everybody who doesn't know, Ferate and I both actually got to run some 100-milers. But talk to us about that journey, the 100-mile piece. Talk to us about just tell us a little bit about that 100-miler that you ran. Oh, dude.
Well, that's funny you brought up. It's funny that's when you first met my parents.
Yeah, that's the first time I met
some life advice is prepare your family a little bit more for it.
Oh, for the 100-miler?
Yeah. They were definitely not as prepared. I could have given them some. I mean, it was my first time doing an ultra marathon, so there was a lot going on in my head. But just little stuff where I'm like, hey, I'm going to be pretty messed up the next time you see me. Like just stuff like that. Or like, it was just like little things. Like my mom's like, oh, I should have brought like more jackets or like brought you more food, like little stuff like that. Yeah. But everything's just like a repetition. It's all feedback and learning. But the 100-miler.
I saw your mom and we were like 90 miles in and she's like, is he okay? Like, cause you were messed up. She's like, is he okay? And I'm like, well, he's 90 miles into this thing. So for all things considered, like he's doing all right.
Well, dude, that was, so I don't remember all the details, but that was like mile 83. So
83. Okay.
So we had just finished, you had just ran 27 miles overnight with me. And then we made it at 9 and the cutoff was 9:30. Yeah. And then Con was picking me up and we got like the trekking poles and that was like, that was the last little push. It was like the 16 to 17 to close it out. But the 100-miler, I'd love, you were the one who inspired me to do it. Actually, it was, I wanted to do a misogi. So like the Japanese word is like, there's like this backstory of basically it's, you want to do a 1 year defining moment. And it's this challenge that you do that it is so impactful that it impacts every other day for the whole year. Or you could look back and be like, oh yeah, that was the year of blank. So like last year I ran a 100-mile ultra marathon. So now I'll always know that year I did that.
That was your misogi.
That was my misogi.
And such a big move.
Yeah. And I just remember like we were actually recording a podcast on my pod. And you were like, dude, you should just like make the jump. Don't do the 30. Don't do a 50. You just got to go marathon straight to 100. Yeah. And I was like, all right. And then I signed up and honestly, one crazy part was I just knew I could do it. That was the weirdest. Like, I wrote about this a little bit, but David Senra, he's the host of the Founders Podcast. Okay. And he talks about this idea of like belief comes before ability. So it's like you could believe you can do it. And then you start developing the skills to have the ability to do it. So like I was nervous going into it, like you've experienced that as well. But I also was like, there's no way unless something crazy happens. Like I know I'll make it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the 100-mile was insane. I have this like pretty funny selfie video at like mile 37 when I was going up that logging hill.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I'm shattered. Like, it's like, oh, like just talking to my phone. Like, I can't believe I'm already cratered. Like, I'm blown up at mile 37. I was like, I just got to make it up this hill. And I think I told you this story before, but this guy passed me. That was like just a really tough part. I was having trouble breathing, and it was right before I met up with you guys at that aid station. And the guy passed me and was like, hey man, just remember, like, people kind of cheer for the guy who gets first, but people really cheer for the guy who gets it like 10 minutes before the cutoff. Like, keep it up, man. And I didn't know him or anything. He was just motoring by me. Yeah, but he was like, he said something like, people cheer for the guy who gets it in 20 hours, but people really cheer for the guy who gets it 20 minutes before the cutoff.
Yeah.
It was something like that. And I was like, what? And then it was ironic because
like blacked out.
Yeah, I was like, what? And then like an hour later it hit me. I was like, oh, that's what he meant.
Yeah.
That was like one super, we could talk for hours about that experience, but.
You think it's in that experience, because I've been through it, you think it's amazing that you said that you believed you could do it. And I like that quote, you like, the belief comes before the ability. I think a lot of people, they'd never even believed they could do a 100-miler. So where do you think that belief came from in the first place?
Ooh.
Just kind of psycho belief or what?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people be like, 100-miler, like, no way, I can't even do that. They close their mind to the whole concept, right? Running 100 miles straight.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know. I need to maybe sort through that, because honestly, the first thing, we'll just sort through it like out loud.
Yeah, let's do it.
One thing that you made me think of is, like, a lot of people, they're like, yeah, I'm interested in running my first half, or yeah, I want to do a marathon, or like all the guys, like when we ran Eugene on April 28th.
Yeah.
And it's like, we had over 10 people do it. A bunch of people, it was their first marathon. And I just think about it, it's like, yeah, all the training and building up for it is important. Like, that's all evidence. Yes, you want to train so you're physically prepared, but I also think people are a lot more capable of doing incredible things than they realize. Yeah. Like gun to your head, you could have probably ran 26.2 miles.
Yeah, of course.
Like, okay, you might not do it in sub 3, but for some people, but I think, like, right now, a lot of people, if you had 8 hours, you could cover 26.
Of course.
miles. Like, people can do a marathon.
You can do it.
And so I think it's expanding your edges of like what you're capable of.
Yeah.
Where does that belief come from? I don't know. That's psycho. I just like, I guess
psycho.
It's,
run 100 miles is a little bit psycho.
Yeah. Like, I remember one of my buddies, one of my best friends, Michael Richardson. I remember when I ran my first marathon in Portland, and I called him after it, and he was like, do you think you could have went faster? And I was like, I knew you were going to ask me that. No. He goes, did you walk? I go, I knew you were going to ask me that. No. And I just knew. And it wasn't like I was doing it for him, but it was like I was going to give it my absolute best.
Yeah.
And so bringing that to the ultra, I just like, I don't know. Maybe it's like a question of like, I know you've probably talked to yourself. Like, I was talking out loud to myself during the race. It's like, dude, what are you going to do? Stop?
Yeah.
And it's like, no. Like, and it's like, I don't know. I mean, you do get those where you're like, dude, I don't know about this, but yeah, where does it come from? I do think a lot of belief comes from previous work. So like we were talking about Hormozy before we future podcast guest, Alex Hormozy. But he has that quote, you don't become confident by shouting affirmations in the mirror. You become more confident by the stack of evidence.
Yeah, that you built up.
That you are who you say you are.
Yep.
And so I think a part of that is like, well, I've said I'll do certain things and I did them. So it worked out. Cool. Yep. And it's I know you probably experienced this as well. Like you reflect back and you're like, oh, I said I was going to do that and I did that. Whoa, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know, whether that's in business or in running.
Yeah.
And so I think it's like proving to yourself that you can do things you say you want to do. And then I don't know, it kind of starts bleeding into these maybe more scary things that you haven't done before.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Where does the belief come from? It's a good question because 100 miles is, I don't know. There's some days where I'm like, dude, I can't believe I did that. And then there's other days where it like doesn't seem real. And
I would say it's because you also believe in yourself, and when you believe in yourself, then you're able to, when you believe in yourself, then you know that you have the ability to do these really, really challenging things. I think sometimes there's these limitations put on us, whether it's by society, the way we grew up, or mindsets. But when you start to believe in yourself, you realize that, especially if other people have done it, you realize that you can, once you believe in yourself, you realize you have the ability to do some amazing things. Running 100-miler, the 4-minute mile is a pretty interesting example on that. Everyone thought it was humanly impossible to run a 4-minute mile. Then the guy breaks 4 minutes, and then just like that shattered the limiting belief of people. And then just boom, boom. Think about how many people after the first guy did it, we were able to shatter the 4-minute mile. It's pretty wild to think about, right? So the whole time, everyone was saying that's physically impossible. As soon as one guy did it, everybody shattered the limiting belief in their head. Yeah. And they're like, hey, let me do it. Let me do it. Let me do it. Let me do it. So it's pretty cool to see. That's a good example of like, hey, limiting belief gets shattered, and then it just roller coasters for a bunch more people.
Yeah. And I think, I'm glad you brought that up because, dude, it's crazy how you think about applying that 4-minute mile to like your own life. So it's like, where are you doing that to yourself? Where like how, like, it's like the art of getting out of your own way.
Yeah. It's hard to do.
It's so hard or you think about like, what games am I playing? And not like, I don't mean like fun games, but it's like all these projects you're working on, it's like, okay, what games am I? And then it's like, okay, what games do I want to be playing? It's like expanding out and testing and trying something new. But it's like, what is that 4-minute mile barrier in your own life?
Yeah. And I do it all the time.
Like, same. I'm so maybe I get excited because I'm like, oh dude, I do this to myself. Like,
Well, exactly. You see like the question I always say to us is like, why not us? If you see somebody you got this big goal in your mind and somebody else has done it, they've gotten there, or maybe somebody hasn't even done it yet, but why not us? If somebody else has done it, why not us? What's the difference between, like the 10,000 unit goal? You see a Grant Cardone's got well over 10,000 units. First thing I say to myself, and maybe this is crazy, maybe it's not, but I'm like, hey, why can't I do that? Like, why can I do that same thing? I can do the same thing, And so I think that question of, hey, why not me? You actually deserve it. Start to believe that you deserve it, and then put all the action behind it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we don't even believe we deserve these big, huge, major things, or we don't even want our mind to go there because the future, it could also be a little bit of a fear. Like the future, if you have this little fire in you that wants these really big things, sometimes we get a little afraid of all the work that it would have to take to get there. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I think that sometimes that blocks people too, because if you want really, really big things, there's a lot of work. You have to believe you can do it and believe you deserve it. I think some people don't believe they deserve the life beyond their wildest dreams. They have that limiting belief. They don't actually believe they deserve the life beyond their wildest dreams. So like first get rid of that. And then second, we might get fearful of all the work it takes to get there, all the risks that you have to take to get there. But I think just take the first step forward, and then the rest of it, that's what Momentasize is, right? Conquer each little moment. And next thing you know, you're going to look back and you'll be like, yeah, in 2023, I did run that 100-miler. I started with a belief, then I trained so hard to get there. And then I had all these hurdles in the moment, and you overcame them. If you would have had like a betting person when they saw you, at mile, when you can't breathe the way that you weren't able to breathe, you still overcame that because your mental mind far surpassed what your body thought it was physically capable to do, right? It was your mind that kept your body moving forward. I watched it unfold. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, dude. It was cool in Eugene too, when we had that big table. We were all eating dinner before the before the marathon.
Yeah.
And you guys were telling stories from the race that I didn't even remember.
Yeah.
And
Of your race.
like,
Yeah.
What? Yeah. From the 100 miler. And I was like, really? And you were like, oh, you don't remember that? I was like, no. Yeah. And it was, dude, the self-belief thing. I'm curious. How do you work through that when you have those moments of like, oh man, like I don't, especially like with what you're building and like, and your team, it's like, do you work through that through conversation or like voice memos or writing or what?
Internal dialogue sometimes it's an internal dialogue. You know, I think the biggest thing you can do for me is regulate the stress through outlets, right? So if you want anything big, there is no avoiding the amount of pressure, challenge, work, ups, downs, like feeling like you're close to failure. You can't, the pressure it takes to do big things is inevitable. You cannot get around it. So you have to find releases to let that pressure come in, find a release so you can deal with it, and then you can work through it, right? You're either going to deal with the pressure and come through it, or you're going to fail and you're going to quit because you don't want it anymore. And for me, when I feel lots and lots of pressure come at me, I do a couple things. First, I like move. For me, I need movement. So I go on a run. Like running is the most like magical.
It's a mental
therapy.
Mental shower is what I've called it. Yeah.
You explained it. That's exactly what it is. It's a mental shower. So I go take a mental shower by going on a run. And then that clears all that all the fear, internal dialogue. And then instead of all the noise, I just say, hey, what can I control within this pressure? And what's the next step forward? And I just take massive action on the next step, and then the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And before you know it, just like we talked about, you've run 100 miles, right? Or you work through that massive amount of pressure. So that's one key thing that I use. And then I will say I was so blessed with a father and a mother who had been nurturing my mindset and self-belief and providing me with a ton of resources and a mirror to reflect constantly on how to grow my belief in myself through like 3 really simple questions my dad always asked me was, what went well? What didn't go so well? And what are you going to do to improve on it?
Yeah.
Those 3, you just continue to ask yourself those 3 over and over and over and over, and you'll be able to really, you'll be really able to make something special happen. So I was very blessed with a parenting that was really invested in creating a growth mindset for me. And I think that sometimes when I went back to saying like, hey, some people don't even believe they deserve it, a lot of that comes to what they've had to experience in their life, right? Mm-hmm. And that's to no fault of their own. It's just, that's the reality of that. And I think that's
you'd mentioned this. I listened. I like the growth mindset podcasts.
Yeah.
You little like,
we just started those.
Yeah. Like the 10 to 15 minute updates.
We just started ripping those.
Yeah. Those are sick. They're like little check-ins I liked those podcasts because it's a little bit different. Like this also, when you have a guest on a podcast, like it feels like you're hanging out with both of them. Yeah. But I like those because it'd be like when you're listening to it in the car, it's like you're sitting shotgun.
Yeah.
And I'm driving and you're like, oh dude, let me tell you about what I've been up to. Yeah. And it's like a short little 10, 15 minute catch up. But in those podcasts, you talked about how June to July, there's a lot of pressure. And you said pressure a few times already.
Yeah.
What is that pressure? Is it internal or external or both?
Both. I think it's both. It's a combination. You got external pressures of just things that have to go right. So you got external pressures of, just these literally everything we need to do to make this thing work. And then
like job.
Pressures, financial pressures and business pressures in general. And then the internal pressures is that little voice inside of you, right? And so, I think it's the combination of both of how you make it happen. But I love the pressure. Like if I didn't have pressure, I think I would be unhappy. I want pressure. Like the more pressure I can have, the better off I am, the better off I actually operate. Even if in the moment for a second, I feel like I can't handle it anymore. I just go for a mental shower on a run, right? And we're good to go.
Yeah. I think this is something else that fascinates me. Yeah. It's like, I don't think it's talked about very often, or maybe I haven't found the people who are talking about this, but I think it's unique, like guys in their late 20s and like early 30s, and they have this like, there's this created pressure to like have it all figured out. And for anybody, you know, it's I'll get to the question here, but just kind of setting the stage is, it's like when you ask the question, what am I doing with my life? You almost like trick yourself into thinking like you're the only one that's asking that question, where in reality, like everyone experiences that all the time. But did you ever put a lot of pressure to like have it all figured out? Or like this idea of like becoming, you know, it's like, oh, I want to become this kind of person. I put pressure on myself. I'm like, I just want to be that person now, not wait for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like do you put pressure? Have you put pressure on yourself to have it all figured out?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. I actually almost, if you see what I have today with my beautiful wife and my children, I almost ruined all of that. And I almost have nothing of what you see today. I almost ruined what I have today because of that exact question of my whole thing was I had a plan. I wanted everything to be figured out. I wanted to have my career figured out. I wanted to have a home in place. I wanted everything to be set up. Yeah. I wanted all this, everything figured out, who I was, my career, all of that. And then I was going to start a family. And the funny thing about that is it was actually the exact opposite thing. So what I wanted for my plan was the exact opposite thing happened. And that was actually what gave me everything I needed to create what you see today. And so it was a really funny thing. It was the opposite of what I had planned happened. And that's what created everything that I wanted in the first place. Pretty wild situation. Yeah, right? So it was that's definitely an internal question. I think a lot of people struggle with, and it's a dang good question. Tell us a little bit about, the podcast that you have, and you're also doing right now. You're also doing a stint of putting out just a ton of content. Tell us a little bit about that, and let's go into that.
Yeah. I guess we'll start recent, dude. I signed up for this course. It was Zach Pogrob. He's the obsession guy. I'll send it to you. Okay, you've definitely seen his stuff. Cool. But his idea is follow obsession. And why obsession is actually a good thing. Yeah. Or if you think about it. I
agree. No, yeah. I couldn't agree
more. I just signed up for a course. It's called Press Record 30. So you record 30 videos in 30 days and you publish to like one platform. So I'm doing YouTube. Cool. And they're just like selfie videos. And you got to rip on a topic. You can edit it, or you could do it like, I don't know, I've used Riverside FM and I'll do some of my videos that way. But that's what I started recently. And it's funny how you can lean in to doing hard things, but then like staring at, we've talked about this, where like staring at your phone and recording a selfie video is really weird. It's weird. And it's like, but he talked about, it's an energy transfer. How do you transfer energy to other people? And it's like, how can you talk to your phone like you're talking to your best friend? Like you're giving guidance to your best friend instead of being like, what's up, guys? Hey, it's blah, blah, whatever. Yeah. And so that's what I've been doing right now. And it's this idea of just getting reps of talking to the camera and using video, or like using the podcast space as like a forcing function for clarity and a forcing function to communicate better. So that's what I started. I believe today is day 9 of that. So I've been posting videos and just ripping. And honestly, I've been doing one take, no cuts. Yep. So I've done selfie video, no edits, or podcast. Like the one recently, I did like a 20-minute video recapping just like my key performance indicators for May. Yeah. And just like trying to find little things of how I can get better. Like having like, I'm like, oh, we ran in Eugene, boom. And then a picture of us running in Eugene, and then pops up for like 30 seconds, or trying to have a photo pop up every minute just for the viewers to be like more engaged. That's one area I'm trying to get better, but that's right now. And then I'll clip some of those to make them shorts and put it out there from those videos. So that's the thing I'm diving into right now. It's just Press Record 30. But then, the podcast, is I've just been, honestly, I've been getting way better, but I've been grinding on CapCut and cutting, just trying to make shorts and a lot of the short form. It's just like how people see podcasts, you know, like, or you've experienced too. Like very rarely is someone going on and being like, oh, I just found this new podcast. I listened to it for an hour and a half. You know, it's like people see a little 15-second clip and they're like, oh, that's interesting. And I'm going to go check out that podcast. So I've just been trying to do one podcast a week. I started that in April of 2022.
How many episodes you got now?
I have 82.
Boom.
Yeah.
That's a huge deal.
As of June 21st.
There you go. Man.
Yeah, let's go.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I have 68 with guests, and then I have 14 that are like audio versions of the newsletter, which is basically like, that's why I liked your 10-minute one when you're like, hey, what's up, everybody? This is what we're up to in June. So I have 14 of those. And I've tried to do one a week, but in reality, I view it kind of like training. Like sometimes you're running more than you're lifting. Sometimes you're lifting more than you're running. So that's something I was pretty hard on myself at the beginning of this year. I did 16 podcasts in December and January. And I was like going off on that, but I didn't write very much. And then February, I wrote an article every day, like a short little article every day for the month of February. And I didn't really do any podcasts. And I really had to check myself because I was like, oh, dude, you're not doing the podcast. Like you're slacking. Where in reality, it's just like, hey, dude, you're doing more writing than podcasting. Like it's going to be an ebb and flow. But dude, I love the podcast space. It's like it's an art. It's beautiful. It's I could riff on that for forever. The podcast is, so it's like I press record 30. That's what I'm working on right now. Putting myself out there and communicating more clearly on YouTube. Then the podcast, I'll put that on like Spotify or whatever. And then I have the newsletter, which is, I use Beehive. And that's like an email. It's once a week, or lately I've just been doing more podcasting. So the emails have been once a month. Yeah. But all of those I've tried to the real driver is I love connecting with people. I love learning from people. I want to cultivate curiosity in other people. And I want to use all those platforms to think more clearly. And so you can use writing as a forcing function for that. And you can use the podcast to think more clearly and communicate more clearly. Because I don't know if you've ever felt like this, but I'll be like explaining something and you get down this rabbit hole and then you're like, wait. I got to say that over again. Like that didn't make any sense. And it's like, how can I get better at that? Where like we've all been around those people who, when they talk, they're just like dropping bars. Yeah. And you're like, what? Like, it's like that coach that gives that inspirational speech, or like that CEO who is so well-spoken. And you're like, how's this dude just dropping hammers? And he doesn't talk very often, but when he does, it means the most. And it's like, what a cool skill to have, that energy transfer. So yeah, those are the things I've been diving into. The podcast space is really interesting because you're able to build relationships at scale. So there's a lot of leverage behind it. Like James Clear has talked about this idea of how can he create more versions of himself who are working while he's sleeping. And each episode of the podcast is a version of you working while you're sleeping, because someone's going to check out that episode and listen to it. And it's like building relationships at scale. You know, it's like we're friends and we're like, we all connect, and like seeing all the guys here when I showed up. But for all those people who like can't drive to Bend and hang out with you, like they can listen to that 15-minute podcast and create like a friendship with you. So I don't know. I could rant on that.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. And I commend you big time for sticking on it and sticking with it. I think many, many times we want to see results. We set these expectations that these like really big results need to come, especially when you've been putting in like you have been putting in real effort for, a good long period of time. I think sometimes we have this, I say it all the time, we have this idea of that you want the results to be in a linear fashion with your effort, but it actually happens in an exponential moment. Yeah. And people oftentimes they give up too early. But to do 82 podcasts, it's I listened to something the other day. They said even if you do 21 podcasts, somebody who has the discipline to do 21 podcasts on their show, they become part of 1% of people.
Jack Butcher said that.
Yeah. So you said that then, when you stay with that and continue to push it out, there's Richard Brunson is another great guy. He's I would say one of the marketing geniuses of today's age. He talks a lot about how finding your voice, it takes a long time to even find your voice and to be able to do all those reps and to get comfortable. It's very awkward for some reason or another, who knows why, to turn on a camera and get comfortable with it. But I think that
boom shakalaka.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I think that being able to put in more reps, you get more comfortable with it, and you start to find your true voice over time. So I commend you for just continuing to do it. And I can't wait to watch you continue to do it over time, right? It's the compounding effect of just continuing to put out what you believe in and living that growth mindset. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Appreciate you.
Yeah.
I think it's sweet too. It's like the internal game where like you guys have blown up, like having like the Instagram follower account we talked about, where you were like, oh yeah, like we started pumping out more shorts, putting like the show on YouTube and all of that. And you had that exponential growth. But I do think it's like, even if you didn't have that, you would still, your internal scoreboard, like you'd still be recording the podcast.
Yeah.
Even if
you just keep going,
even though like the front half of 2024 has been awesome for the growth.
It's all Riley.
Yeah, Riley's getting after it, dude. But it's like been really cool to see that exponential growth, and that is great feedback. But I think the cool part is, I know, let's say that exponential growth didn't happen at the beginning of 2024 and it happened later in the year. It's like you still would have kept pumping out these, like we talked about before we click record, was like creating that binge bank of high value content and like information. It's like, I think you just got to like keep stacking days.
Yeah.
But then for you, it's sick, because for you guys, it's like you're getting both right now. You're reaping the rewards of stacking those days, and you are getting people checking it out and getting a lot of value out of it. I think that's the other part. It's like people are getting stuff out of it. They're not just checking it out.
That's the goal, right? To be a go-giver. I think that's the go-giver approach in life, I think is a huge piece. And I always think like, hey, even when Riley came on, we were talking about it and we're like, let's just figure out a way to become a little bit better at what we're doing every single day. And like 3 years from now, we'll actually analyze it and be like, hey, where are we at? What's happening? Of course we look at it and we track metrics, et cetera. But it's actually like, we know we're not going to actually be any good. Let's see, like 3 years from now or 5 years from now or 10 years from now.
Yeah.
How are we doing then? And then we'll really look back. Because think about how long it takes to master anything. It takes 10,000 hours of quality practice.
Yeah.
You got to get the original practice out first, and then quality practice. And then you can become a master after 10,000 hours. That's a lot of reps.
Yeah. And it takes the pressure off when you like know you're going to, like, let's say like you're playing a decade game.
Yeah.
It takes,
that's it. Yeah.
Not pressure, but like stress.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that reel wasn't very good. And you're like, well, I'm going to do this for 10 years. So that's okay.
Try again.
We'll be all right. Yeah. Versus like, oh, we have to get this many viewership by the end of July. And it's like, okay, why is your time horizon so short?
That's right.
Yeah.
What blows my mind is, when you do start putting yourself out there, you'll have like two buckets of, you got people or maybe actually, I think now that I think about it, you got three buckets. You got like people who are supportive of you, who engage with you. You got people who hate you, who also engage with you. And then you have probably just some people that are silent, who checking in on you, see what's going on. But that hate bucket, I remember the first video we had, like, that's a hard mental bucket to go through when you got people like hitting you at every angle. I remember the first video we had that did decent. We started getting so much hate thrown at us. And like
what?
Just everything you could think of. Everything.
Just random stuff.
I mean, you can go look at it. It's some crazy stuff. I mean, everything from tight jeans, pansy, tattoo, like everything you could think of. Whatever angle you want, to the point where, like, I remember mentally at first, I was like, should I delete this video? Like, this is people are really coming at me. Should I delete this video? And I think mentally, it's kind of cool to grow through that as well and know that no matter what you do, as long as you stay who you are, put out who you are, there's going to be people who hate you, who love you, but you just got to keep doing your thing. Especially if you got some polarizing type of views, of course, there's going to be people that hate you and it'll just toughen your skin. You don't have to pay attention to the haters. You just keep making it happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember there was one video when you first started just like posting like the selfie videos.
Yeah.
And there was a lady that was like, I don't know why this sticks out. It just had me cracking up. But she was like, how about you don't take selfie videos while driving? And you commented and you were like, why, thank you. I really appreciate the feedback. I'll take this into consideration next time. Yeah. And then in your next video, you were like, what's up, everybody? The car stopped. Or you said something about how you weren't driving. And I was like, oh, I love that. Like,
that was way back in the beginning.
Back in the day, yeah. It is interesting too with like those, like Chris Williamson of Modern Wisdom or like Joe Rogan. He talks about all the time. They're just like, oh, like they'll have a guest on there. Like, you look at the comments. And they're like, don't do that.
Yeah, don't go.
And then like Joe Rogan will say that to like famous comedians. He's like, you read through those? They're like, yeah. He goes, oh, you're going to go insane.
Yeah.
Or like Joe Rogan's talked about like post and ghost.
Yeah.
It's like his team sorts through all the analytics.
Yeah.
He's like, you just got to post it. And he's like, don't even open the app.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's an interesting game. Like,
we're working on that now too. It's good. Yeah. You go in there, there's some negative stuff in there, baby.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because it's like, I look at it like I'm not trying to be like a content creator.
Yeah. It's
just like, I want to be more of like explore my curiosity and then just document the journey.
That's cool.
Which I think is a big difference. Like you guys are documenting like what you guys are building and why you're doing it versus just being like clickbait, like check this out. Like,
no, we don't have any clickbait for it. We're documenting it, and we're same thing. We're just trying to have a go-giver and connect with as many people as we possibly can.
Yeah, right. It's cool too because it's not only like a construction company. Like you could create this like media. I don't know if media brand is the right word, but like you can just create that. It is being created by like stacking content versus like you could easily not document it, but like putting all this time and effort into documenting the journey. Like people are like innately curious about other humans' journeys because they can like partially experience that. So it's cool. It's like, it's a media brand. That's
all Riley. So anybody who wants to grow their personal brand, hit us up. Riley Clark will help
shout
you out. Shout out to Riley
Killing it.
Clark. Yeah, hit us up on that. Ferate, just, we're going to wrap this thing up. But what are because you live the growth mindset and that's one of the things I love and cherish about you. What are some books, resources? What are some things if somebody also loves the growth mindset, lives it, or is like, this is their first time hearing about the growth mindset, even they're like, what is that? What are some resources or books that you love that they could read or go to?
Ooh. All right. I'll start with like what I'm doing right now. And maybe some people won't like this, but I got the big ass calendar from Jesse Itzler.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of this? Oh, okay. So Jesse Itzler, he created Zico coconut water.
Yeah, I know he is.
Yeah. Or he had like the private jet company, or like 50 Cent was his intern. Like he has a all day running company. It's like one of his projects.
Sweet.
He has like a bunch of these like really cool different businesses.
Cool.
But he's married to Sarah Blakely. She's the founder of Spanx.
Spanx.
Yeah. So power family right there.
Cool. Yeah.
But he has this thing. It's called the Big Ass Calendar, and it's this massive piece of paper that has every day of the whole year on it, and it's just like a blank calendar.
Yeah.
And then he sends you like sticky notes, and then there's this structure behind it. But you can do whatever you want. So like I've adjusted his structure, but basically he has these things. So you put your Misogi on
which
there.
is the one major,
year defining thing. So let's say like 100-mile ultra marathon. Boom. End of August. So you put that sticky note, and then you do Kevin's rule, which is this idea he explains. It was from his buddy Kevin, but basically you try to do one new thing that you don't normally do every 8 weeks. And
like learn how to play the guitar or what?
Yeah. So like his example was like one Sunday I went on a hike with my kids instead of watching he always says like, instead of watching Georgia football.
Yeah.
And it was because you get caught up with like doing the same thing every weekend. And then there's a couple other things a part of that. But basically the idea is if you don't design your life, like somebody else will.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like that pay yourself first idea as well, where you put these sticky notes and you plan out things that are really important to you. Because if you don't do that, then work just like it's really easy I know it's easy for me, but I'll design my week around work, which I know in some ways we have to, but it's like, okay, when do I want to go train jujitsu, or when do I want to go for a run? You put that on the calendar, and then you try to design, like, yes, work, like let's say you work 9 to 5. Okay. You can't really change that, but you need to plan out things that are going to like give you energy or like fill your cup. And this calendar is really cool. It's just like, wow, you can see the whole year. Okay, I have this thing planned here. I have this thing planned here. And just planning the things that mean the most to you and figuring out what matters most.
Yeah, you're to be.
You're to be. Yeah. Not only, and then you're planning these experiences.
That's cool.
And that's something that I've used.
It's called the Big Ass Calendar.
Big Ass Calendar.
All right,
yeah,
guys.
It's like $50. Massive calendar. And it's not just like, oh, I got to put my work schedule on there. You plan out these other things. Yeah. So like he has date night every Wednesday night with his wife.
Yeah.
Or like he tries to go, one cool thing was, I think he has 4 kids.
Yeah.
And he tries to go on one trip, like a one-on-one trip with each of his kids during the year. Yeah. So he plans that out.
That's
like
cool.
When he's going to do that. And then it's like, this dude's an entrepreneur. Like he has work, he plans it out. So, but I know one thing I got caught up with using that calendar was I got in this like, I can't wait mindset. So catching myself, like, don't wish time away. Like it's good to plan everything out, but also planning out time to like do spontaneous things, or don't wish time away. Like just because you have a cool trip in 2 months. And then the other part I adjusted on it is I'll actually go back and write what I did. So like April 28th, it was like, oh, we did the Eugene Marathon. So then when I look at the calendar, you can reflect back on like, oh, there were actually these, maybe they weren't like big things, but like I wrote on it before I drove to Bend. It was like, oh, we did 6 miles in the forest at 6:30 in the morning with Tom and Rory and Anna and Cherry. And like usually I actually wrote on there, we golfed Heron Lakes at 5:45 a.m. on Wednesday morning. So I wrote both of those, and like now it's cool. In December, I'll look back and be like, I remember that. That was fun. So I think that's one thing is like, if you don't design your life, like somebody else will. Like somebody's going to do it. Yeah. So you might as well. So I think the Big Ass Calendar is a good approach, just to plan out like what fills your cup and what gives you energy. I think like Atomic Habits, like people have probably said that on your podcast before, but with a growth mindset is Atomic Habits by James Clear. I mean, that book is like iconic of just being aware of, like the quote from the book is like, every action you take is a vote for the kind of person you wish to be. So think like, where are you casting your votes? And like, it's okay to like, I don't know, if you're crushing dessert or something, like that's fine. You're casting that vote, but like most of your votes are going towards training or working out. Like if your goal is to, I don't know, be in better shape. But I think that's another great place to start for people. Yeah. And then I think maybe this would be a little bit different, I guess, than maybe what other people say. But there's this idea called introjection. And I heard it from Billy Oppenheimer. He's the research assistant for Ryan Holiday, the Stoicism author. And he got it from Andrew Huberman. But it's this idea of you write down and you identify attributes of people you look up to. So it's not the whole person. It's like a very specific attribute. Yeah. And then you write it down on a piece of paper. And so it's like the person and the attribute. So like we use Jesse Itzler, and he's really good at planning, or like he does some really incredible things with his family. Like that's cool. Yes. Date night with his wife once a week, spends time with his kids. Or we could think about people like you look up to. What's one attribute that you really appreciate about a certain person? But he talked about how Andrew Huberman, way back in the day when he was in his lab, he would look at that note card with the person and the attribute that he wanted to embody. And then he would just practice that. And the idea is introjection, you're slowly absorbing that person's attribute by being aware of it every day and practicing it. So I think maybe one really good way to practice having a growth mindset is think about who's like 3 to 5 people that you really look up to and ask why, and then identify like what's one attribute that you really want to embody that they have. And then if you have it on a note card in your car and then a note card on your desk or a note card in your room, how can you see those every day? And I think just seeing them every day, like you're not going to be perfect 10 out of 10 on it, but the byproduct, like if you see it every day, like you're going to start embodying that. So I think that's a good place to start. I know I've done that. Like I'll write a list out of people I really look up to. And I'm like, oh, I really like this one thing about them. I think that'd be sick if I could be like that. Yeah. Not that I'm trying to be like them, but I want that attribute so I can be the best version of me. Yeah. I think that'd be, I don't know, maybe that's a little bit different than.
No, I love that one.
Introjection. You're absorbing the qualities or attributes of people that you look up to by seeing and practicing them every day.
I love it.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, hearing that, who comes to mind for you? Who's someone that you look up to?
Yeah, I've got a bunch of different people that I really, really look up to. I think that one of the exercises similar to what you said in regards to intro, is it called intro? Introjection.
Yeah, I'll send you the clip.
I will. Napoleon Hill is somebody I really look up to. What he did, he's an amazing thought leader way before his time. He actually would create in his imagination and mind, similar to what you're saying. He would create what he called a boardroom. So he took all the people he looked up to in business and politics and life. And what he would do every night before he went to bed, and he got so good at this in his imagination, is he would imagine him sitting around a table with all of his people he looked up to, and whatever he had to work through, whether it was a business problem or a life problem or whatever was happening, he would pose it to the people he looked up to that he studied, and then they would have a conversation about it. And he said it got so real that actually for a while he got a little bit scared of it, and he had to stop doing the imaginations because he thought that was actually what was happening. But it shows you that we can manifest these things in similar way. What he was really doing is taking the people's attributes and what their imagined opinions were and helping solve problems he was having based on people who've already been there.
That's cool.
Right.
So yeah. Cause he could detach from it and look at it from someone else's perspective.
Yeah. Imagine. And so I've been trying to do that. It's a challenging thing to roll your imagination. I've been working on it. It's been hard for me. The boardroom piece I can't do yet, but let's say I'm having something. What I've been doing with it is Russ is somebody I really look up to. He's an artist that I think I just really look up to him. So what I'll do especially if I'm having a business or a relationship or just anything that's on my mind, I imagine I can right now I can imagine sitting at a one-on-one table, having a cup of coffee. I can imagine that. That's much easier for me. I can't do the boardroom yet. It's still too challenging for me, but I'll imagine that. And it's quite the experience to even try to let your mind go there. So
that's cool. Yeah. Hormozi actually has talked about that, where it's no one knows you better than you. Yeah. So in some ways, imagine if he talks about this idea of going back and forth with the 80-year-old version of you. Yeah. So think about if you went to Thump Coffee and you're just sitting outside, you're having a coffee and a croissant or one of those bomb bagel sandwiches or whatever, and you're just BSing with 80-year-old Dirk. You're you sit down, he's like, "Sup, dude?" Yeah. And you're like, "Oh, what's up?" Yeah. And it's working through a problem like that is, very hard to imagine at first, but like you said, it's maybe it's not the boardroom level yet, but it's Russ. You're like, "Yo, what's up, bro?"
Yeah. It's kind of silly to do it, but it's once you get good overall, that it makes a lot of sense. And you have to. What I learned on that is you have to actually really look up to the person. It can't be a vague one, because it has to be able to put the imagination of someone. You have to study them, and I study Russ. I study Russ. I've been following him. I've been studying him since before he was really well known. Right? I was listening to his stuff on SoundCloud before. So I think that's the one. If you're really going to try to play a conversation between somebody, you have to really study him
and it's
rocking chair test is what Hormozi's. We do a lot of what my wife and I talk a lot about rocking chair tests.
What's that?
You're 75 years old and if you're trying to make a big decision now, Do I need to pivot careers? Do I want to move places? If it's a big decision you're stuck on or anything you can't decide on, right? You do a rocking chair test. So you paint a picture in your mind, you close your eyes and you say, this comes from Stephen Covey. You close your eyes and you say, like, create a picture of where you are. For me, it's like a beautiful, I like water. So beautiful water with a meadow with a bunch of grandchildren running around. And that's my picture. And I'm sitting on a rocking chair next to my beautiful wife and holding her hand. And then you ask yourself, like, the whole point is you put yourself in that scene. And then you ask yourself, you look back on your life and whatever decision you have to make now, what do you want that answer to be when you look back? So if you're taking a big chance to start a business, or if you want to move from Portland to Bend, or whatever that hard decision is, same idea. You go to the 75-year-old version of you and say, hey, what do you want to have reflected on? Would you want to say, like, hey, I'm so glad I took that chance? And that's a really cool way. It'll give you an answer to where you actually want to go with it when you're having a hard decision. Like we had a real personal one, was when our first son was born. We had to actually decide, like, are we going to, believe it or not, we had to decide, like, are we going to keep this? We weren't married. We weren't expecting him. It was a surprise. Are you going to have an abortion or not? Now, of course, you could almost the most insane thing to think about, but that's a huge decision, right?
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do there?
Yeah.
And when you do a rocking chair test, or when you sometimes reframe the problem you're having in a different context, it gives you all the answers.
Yeah.
So,
I know we're getting close, but I have to ask you this.
Yeah, go.
You just made me think about that. I love that idea of the rocking chair test. And I have to ask you this because it's something I really struggle with. And I've had some of my friends point this out. Not struggle in a bad way. It's like a blessing.
A good struggle. Yeah.
A blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
Do you ever, like, how do you wrestle with, like, wanting to maximize every day? And, like, you want to maximize your life. Do you ever wrestle with that idea of just, like, always, like, okay, maybe this will set the table a little bit better, but like, maybe it's even in the background. Like, I don't even realize it sometimes, but it's like the best day of the year until tomorrow. It's like, I'm literally trying to do that. I want to maximize every day. That doesn't mean it's like, I just want to have, like, the best day as possible.
Yeah.
And do you ever put pressure on yourself of, like, or how do you, like, wrestle with, like, that 75-year-old test to where you are right now? And you're like, I'm trying to maximize every single day. I want it to be incredible. Yeah. And then it's like spending time with your wife. You're like, when you spend time with her, you want it to be incredible. Yeah. How do you wrestle with trying to, like, maximize every single day? Because I feel like, don't you feel similar?
Yeah. For me, I remember that question, and it's the magic is in the moment. So just trying to stay extremely present in the moment. And I'm far from good at this, especially because I'm very futuristic. I'm always trying to push, go. How much can I push out? How much can I?
That's why I asked.
Yeah, how much can I push out? Like, somebody's coming in. I really care. Somebody's coming in here, but I'm doing this and I'm pushing this text out. And so I think sometimes that those distraction moments are, if I have a day where I'm, like, fully just distracted, like I'm distracted, I don't feel connected, right?
Yeah.
But the most magical moments I have are when I'm in the moment, I'm present, and I'm there, whether that's grinding through something I don't want to be doing, or whether that's, really, like, enjoying this magical moment of watching my sons grow up right in front of my eyes, right? It's when I'm not distracted. That's when I feel connected. It's when I feel like I'm being pulled in 100, or not feel like, that's a BS thing. It's when I'm letting myself be pulled in 100 directions that I don't feel like I'm getting the most of actually being there. So I think that if you can get back to the magic that comes in each moment, that's the life.
Easy money.
That's the life.
Huh. Yeah. Dude, I appreciate you sharing that. Because that's something that's, like, that's all everybody's trying to do, you know? Or at least, it's like they want to live the best life they can with the people they care about the most.
Yeah.
So it's that struggle of, like, thinking ahead to the future, but you want to build all these, like, it's just trying to make the most of every day.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's, like, you have to also plan for the future and tackle that. But that's what you need to be. It goes back to actually saying what you're saying is, like, design your life, or it will be designed for you. So take the moments when it's like, hey, yeah, right now I'm planning for the future. I got to do this, 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 and this. And hey, because I did that now, because I actually planned this rather than just let it float around.
Yeah.
I designed this. I took this time to think about the future. Now it's cool. I'm going to go golf and I don't have to worry about it. I'm going to go enjoy my friends substantially now. Right? I don't have to be distracted or thinking about this or that. So it goes back to actually full circle on like, take the time to design your life the way that you want. And then I think for people who are competitive and perfectionists like I am, don't let off the gas on yourself, but be forgiving of when you make a mistake. Don't let one mistake lead to 10 more. Look at it, quickly adjust it, and get back on course. Because that's another thing that I sometimes struggle with in sports. Like if you watch a player, super good player, right, that has a ton of potential, they make one mistake, they get in their own head, and then it's like one mistake leads to like four more.
If you're in your head, you're dead.
If you're in your head, you're dead. So I think that circling back to that piece and that component, I would say like, because if you say like, oh, I'm just living in the moment, going with the flow, like, and then next thing you know, you're like, you never created the future you want. That's also a problem, right? So it's going back to your big ass calendar, like design it down to, hey, yeah, I'm going to design my life and be intentional, which includes living in the moment and making all those decisions. And then making sure you're on the right path. Like if you hate what you're doing, the one thing I can't stand, and I don't mean this to be offensive, but if you hate what you're doing, you only have, in my opinion, you have one choice: change it. Like what I cannot stand are the people who continue to talk about what they hate or play the victim game or point the finger game, or they don't like their situation, but all they do is talk over and over. And there's people I love very much and over and over and over and over. That's called the victim mentality. I don't want to hear it. Like if you're not going to, if you have a problem, you don't like it, I'm here to brainstorm with you. Let's create a positive pivot, create a plan forward. But I think one thing that happens to people, like if you don't like your life, change it. It is up to you to change it.
Yeah. It's like love your life or change it.
That's it. Yeah. That's the only thing. Don't talk about, like don't endlessly talk about it with no change in action, right? That is what creates. And I think a lot of people are going through that. Like a lot of talk, victim mindset, a lot of talk with no actual action to change it. And that's a huge issue. And I think that, you know, if that's happening to you, like maybe you had to hear this to get over it. Or
start talking to your buddies about it, because they probably feel the same.
And start taking action. Yeah. The key, what I've watched too is like victim mindsets will pair up with victim mindsets. And that's a real problem, because then they're all going to talk about it. It's all negative, right? Again, this isn't to be offensive, but like go back to your energy piece. People connect in energy. So if you look at like champions hang out with champions. I don't mean to be offensive here, but like if you see somebody who's obese, they're typically hanging out with another obese person. Habits are matched, right? If you see like a victim mindset or a negative mindset who connect on negativity, they're usually finding a connection point with somebody else who is negative. I've watched those patterns. I know those relationships. I've watched those patterns. Those are real, true patterns that are happening. So we connect with people who are in the same energy. So maybe that is actually the thing you got to snap out of. Like it goes back to your attribute thing. If you hate what you're doing right now, you hate your life, but you don't know how to change it, find somebody who seems like they're doing what they love, and start connecting with them instead of the coworker who also hates their job, who also just wants to complain about it, but do nothing. And 3 years later, they're having the same conversations. Mm-hmm. That's how you create a miserable life.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are doing that. So I think that's a really really important thing. And I try to like create an energy field around myself, because I can only handle so much, right? Like that's the one pressure I can't handle, is that negativity. So,
yeah. Hell yeah. Dude.
Yeah, we went hard on that. But
dude, thanks for having me on the pod. Yeah. This is sick.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. It's for people who want to connect with you, Ferate, how do they connect with you? How do they find you?
Yeah, it's just Bryant Ferate on just my full name. So BRYANT FERATE. They both always get messed up, but it's just my full name on Instagram and on Twitter. And then on that, you can find like my newsletter. So like you could subscribe to that if it's just bryantferate.beehive.com. And it's the same thing on YouTube. And I'll send it to you guys or whatever.
We'll put it in the notes, man. Yeah.
But and then I'm the only one. So I haven't found anybody with the same name as me. So that's why like my podcast is just the Bryant Ferate Podcast.
Yeah.
But just keep it all the same so it's easy to find. And yeah, dude, it's cool to like it'd be sweet if anybody checks this out. But more importantly, like I just think this is sick where we created this. I think podcasts are cool because I say this in every single episode. So if I don't know, people who check out my podcast are probably tired of hearing it, but it's like we just created a really cool time capsule where, I don't know, in 10 years, you can look back and be like, dang, remember that weekend at the end of June and we sat down and recorded this podcast? And you can almost like tap in to that weekend by just listening to this. So I just appreciate you sharing, like, time is our greatest currency. So I appreciate you sharing your time with me and letting me come on your pod and we can create a time capsule that it'll be cool to check this out.
We will. Appreciate it. We'll do it again. And with that, we will see you on the next one, baby.